Greetings and salutations from the illustrious studios of the Casa de Single Wide News. Leroy, your humble reporter at your service. Well, we're ending the month of February, Black History Month, and it is hard not to associate black history in this country with slavery because we are continually reminded of it. And I do not want in any way to condone slavery here or anywhere else in the world in the past, the present, or the future. Slavery sucks. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter what land it happens on or happened on. So that being said, I want to dispel a particular myth. And that myth is that white people were essentially the inventors of slavery. It seems that that is what we are being taught, that we are the evil white slave owners and always have been, and it is exclusive only to white people, and that is simply not the case. Slavery has existed in every culture, in every religion, in every land, all across the world to the earliest known history of mankind. It has existed. In Judaism and Christianity in particular, there was a type of slavery known as indentured servitude. That was essentially, as I make an agreement with you that I'm going to work for you for 7 years. You're going to feed me, put clothes on my back, and at the end of that 7 years, or whatever period is decided upon, then I get my freedom and some sort of a bonus. A house, a dozen goats or sheep, a mule and a plow, something, whatever was agreed upon. The marriage of one of your daughters, what have you. Now, there was an exception to this. Sometimes the servant didn't want to go out and make it on their own. They wanted to stay with the master, and if that was the case, I'm getting food, I'm getting a roof over my head, I'm getting clothing, I'm working, it's not that bad, this guy's not a butthole, I just want to stay. And then there was the ear was pierced with an awl to show that that this person belonged to another person for the rest of their life, but it was a voluntary act. Now that was the typical ancient view of slavery in the biblical times. That unfortunately did not carry on into our recent past. However, the word slave actually comes from the Slavs. The Slavs were the white people of Northern Europe, and it wasn't because they owned slaves. It was because the black and Arabic Muslim corsairs would go to the European coast and capture white people, Ireland, England, Italy, Spain, wherever they were at, Russia, wherever. And they would also, they were pirates, so any ships that they came across, they would take the people that were on the ships, they would capture them or kill them if they resisted too much, take the ships, and so on. My personal family tree, I had the fortunate uh, fortunate lineage that I had an uncle that traced our family tree all the way back to Germany. And that's where he kind of lost the trail. That was back in the early 80s, so internet wasn't a thing. But internet being what it is, I decided a couple of years ago to follow up, and with Google Translate, I found my family name. I found someone in Germany who had a family tree as well that listed Johannes Wilhelm, the one of my forefathers, the forefather that came across from Germany at the age of 10, and got a little backstory on it. That his mother had died when he was very young, and his father was captured by pirates on a fishing boat, or at least that's what they believed. Um, Johannes Wilhelm, or Jonathan William, I won't throw my last name out there, but he came across to America with a friend of the family, and as an indentured servant, a 10-year-old indentured servant, he worked for so many years and got his start and became fairly prominent. Moved farther south into North Carolina, and that's where most of my family lineage still remains. The point being, though, his father was captured by pirates, which were likely the Barbary pirates from the Barbary coast. These were slave traders. So I may be descendant of a slave. If he wasn't killed in the capture of the ship, then he was likely taken to the Barbary coast and sold as a slave. And there were well over 1 million documented white people who were taken to northern Africa and sold as slaves between the early 1600s all the way into the early 1900s and the Ottoman Empire, which ended in 1920. They still had white slaves then. Now, these Barbary pirates weren't particular about religion or race. They didn't care whether you were white or black or brown or yellow or whatever. If they could capture you, then they would. And they would take you and they would sell you. Now, in Africa, along this Barbary coast, slavery was prominent for thousands of years in much of Africa. One tribe would capture another tribe, take over another tribe, and they would take them as slaves or sell them as slaves. The American Indian, the Native Americans, as they seem to prefer to be called, this was a very common practice among them as well. This happened in China. The Mongols took over huge sections of China and much of Europe as well, and they enslaved the populations. Now, the indigenous Chinese people don't treat the Mongols very good, and they're holding Uyghur Muslims, about 1 million of them right now, in slavery. One of the most popular, or the most abundant, I should say, areas of slavery in the world today, per capita, is in Africa. Black people owning other black people. This is particularly prevalent in Mauritania, which is along the Barbary coast. And some estimates are as high as 20% of the population today is held in slavery. That's 1 out of 5 people. And it's It wasn't outlawed until 1981. That's the year after I graduated from high school. It wasn't criminalized until 2007, and to date there have only been 3 slave owners that have been prosecuted. Now, this is their culture. I'm not bashing any race of people for slavery. I'm just pointing out the fact that not only was it wrong 150 years ago in the United States, 175 years ago in Europe, but it was wrong 150, 200, 300, 400 years ago in Africa and in all of the Arab countries, and it continues today in many parts of the world, the least of which is in the United States and Europe. And it was white people, along with free blacks and escaped slaves in this country, that not only ended slavery in the United States, but made it their task to end slavery in as many places across the world as they possibly could. And to me, that is something that we should be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with our black brethren and be proud of. Now, there was discrimination, there were Jim Crow laws, there was segregation, all that stuff. All this stuff came from the southern states, the Democrats. Sorry to put that fine a point on it, but slavery was the party of the Democrats. Jim Crow law, the party of the Democrats. Segregation was the party of the Democrats. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, the first Republican president in the history of this country. Now, at that time, when a president was elected, the second runner-up became the vice president, and that was Andrew Johnson. He was a Democrat. So, had Abraham Lincoln lived a few more years and not been murdered, there's a good chance that all of these Jim Crow laws and segregation and all that may have never happened. Now, white people were enslaved for well over 300 years in Africa, in the Arab countries. It was about the same time that black slaves began to be brought into the American colonies. It was only indentured servitude to begin with. It was actually a black man who owned a black slave. The black slave had finished his term of indentured servitude. He went to work for a white man. The black man went to court, and his argument was essentially that indentured servitude was a white Christian ideology. That in Africa there was no such ideology, and that black man that had been his slave had no right to be released because the culture from which he came made slavery a lifetime of servitude. And unfortunately, the judge ruled in his favor. And that was the beginning, and I'm not excusing any white person that owned a slave ever. Ever. Or a black man, or an Arab man, or a Chinese man. I don't care. Male, female, whatever. Slavery was wrong. Slavery is wrong today. There are millions of slaves being held across the world today. You've heard of human trafficking? Being brought across our southern border into the United States? That's slavery. Call it what it is. And until we can stand together, shoulder to shoulder, and love one another, and understand that we stand for the same thing, for freedom, for our God-given rights. God gave us these rights, not the Constitution, not the government. We were endowed by our Creator. We were all made in the image of God. So can we come together on this and heal? Can we stop pointing fingers, screaming reparations? Can we get together and stop the slavery that's going on now? Can we stand together for that? Dear God, I hope so. Well, I just thought that's something that people needed to hear. And please research and find out for yourself that I'm not lying to you. And when somebody throws this up into your face about the years of oppression and all that, put the blame where it goes. The darkness of a human heart. Not the color of our skin. God bless you one and all. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. God bless you, everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe. And y'all take care now. I'll talk to you real soon.